Não se envolva, porque isso aqui não é brincadeira. Nós tem pra falar que vai morrer polícia e se vir tentar peitar nós.
How many people have you killed?
April 1st, 2022. A federal judge in Maryland looks across her courtroom at a man they call Reaper. Miguel Angel Correa Diaz sits in shackles, listening as she sentences him to life in prison without parole. The prosecutor's words echo through the silent courtroom. The brutality of Correa Diaz is almost unfathomable. This isn't hyperbole. This isn't courtroom theater. This is the documented reality of what happens when violence becomes a way of life. Tonight, we're taking you inside the documented cases that earned 5 criminal organizations the title of the world's most vicious gangs. Not speculation, not rumors. Court records, FBI testimony, witness statements under oath. These aren't just criminals. They're architects of terror who've turned entire communities into laboratories for testing the limits of human cruelty, and their stories are more horrifying than any fiction Hollywood could create. If gang history, cartel power, and real street politics is your lane, hit subscribe and ride with Crime Syndicated. Segment 1, MS-13, The Reaper's Harvest.
35-year-old Miguel Angel Correa Diaz is also known as Reaper. For good reason, say officials. He gave the go-ahead for murders across the Northeast as the MS-13 gang's regional director.
Mara Salvatrucha, MS-13. The name alone sends shivers through law enforcement agencies across 3 countries. But to understand their true viciousness, you need to meet Miguel Angel Correa Diaz, the man federal prosecutors called the most brutal gang leader they'd ever prosecuted. Correa Diaz controlled the Sailors Locos Salvatrucho's West Side clique from his base in Langley Park, Maryland. A quiet suburban community where families thought they were safe. They were wrong. Between 2010 and 2017, Correa Diaz turned this neighborhood into his personal kingdom of terror. The protection racket was simple and effective. Local businesses received visits from MS-13 members. Pay up or face the consequences. But Correa Diaz's innovation wasn't in the extortion itself. It was in the psychological warfare that accompanied it. Court documents reveal how he would have rival gang members tortured in front of their families, not just to eliminate enemies, but to send a message that reached far beyond the immediate victim. The money flowed in 2 directions. Heroin and cocaine sales generated millions in revenue, with a significant portion sent directly to MS-13 leadership in El Salvador. This wasn't just local crime, it was international terrorism financing. Every dollar earned on American streets funded the expansion of MS-13's reign of terror across Central America. When federal prosecutors finally brought Correa Diaz to trial, the evidence was overwhelming. Conspiracy to commit murder in aid of racketeering, drug dealing conspiracy, witness tampering, money laundering. The list read like a catalog of every crime imaginable, but it was the witness testimony that truly revealed the depth of his brutality. Former gang members, speaking under federal protection, described initiation rituals that involved murdering innocent civilians. They testified about how Correa Diaz would personally oversee torture sessions, not for information, but for entertainment. One witness described watching him laugh while a rival gang member was slowly dismembered with a machete. The human cost extended far beyond the direct victims. Entire families fled Langley Park, abandoning homes and businesses they'd built over decades. Children stopped playing outside. Parents escorted their kids to school in groups, taking different routes each day to avoid predictable patterns that MS-13 could exploit. But Correa Diaz's true legacy lies in the organizational structure he helped perfect. MS-13 operates like a multinational corporation, with specialized divisions for recruitment, enforcement, logistics, and finance. On April 1st, 2022, U.S. District Judge Paula Sinius delivered the sentence that ended Correa Diaz's reign of terror. Life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Segment 2, Sinaloa Cartel, El Chapo's torture chamber.
28 members of the Sinaloa Cartel as part of a massive investigation into international fentanyl trafficking. And among those charged, the sons of former drug lord El Chapo, who is now serving a life sentence in federal prison.
February 12th, 2019. A federal courtroom in Brooklyn falls silent as witness Isaias Valdez-Rios begins his testimony. For the next 3 hours, he will describe in excruciating detail how Joaquin El Chapo Guzman personally tortured and executed rival cartel members. Jurors stare at their feet, unable to make eye contact with anyone in the room. Rolling Stone reporter Noah Hurwitz, who covered the entire trial, later described it as the most shocking testimony he'd ever witnessed in a courtroom. This wasn't hearsay or speculation. This was a former cartel insider, under oath, describing how the world's most powerful drug lord had turned murder into an art form. Valdez-Rios testified that Guzman didn't just order executions, he participated in them. He described watching Guzman personally torture a rival cartel leader for over 6 hours, using techniques designed to maximize pain while keeping the victim conscious. The goal wasn't information, it wasn't revenge, it was entertainment. But Guzman's true genius lay in industrializing violence. Under his leadership, the Sinaloa cartel became the largest drug trafficking organization in human history, generating nearly $14 billion in profits over 2 decades. They built sophisticated tunnel networks under the US-Mexico border, operated their own navy of submarines, and maintained a private army larger than some national militaries. The violence wasn't random. It was strategic. Every public execution, every mass grave, every display of brutality served a specific business purpose. Terror became their most effective marketing tool, more valuable than any advertising campaign. Guzman's capture in 2016 required a joint operation involving the DEA, FBI, Mexican Federal Police, and military special forces. Even then, he managed to escape from maximum security prisons twice, using tunnels that cost millions of dollars to construct. On July 17, 2019, Guzman was sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. As he was led away to ADX Florence, the most secure prison in the United States, federal prosecutors warned that his conviction would do little to stop the flow of drugs into America. Segment 3. Barrio 18, The Endless War.
A member of the Blood Street gang was indicted today for shooting a man inside a Long Island IHOP. The shooting captured on this surveillance video. Suffolk County prosecutors say back on March 4th, 19-year-old DeAndre Green opened fire on 2 men as they walked up to his table at the IHOP in Lake Ronkonkoma.
San Salvador, El Salvador. Population, 1.2 million. Murder rate, 18 people killed every single day. The mathematics of terror in a country where 2 gangs have declared war, not just on each other, but on the very concept of civilian life. Barrio 18, also known as the 18th Street Gang, began in Los Angeles in the 1960s. But it was in El Salvador where they perfected a form of violence so extreme that it defies comprehension. Unlike other criminal organizations that use violence as a tool, Barrio 18 has made violence their primary product. Court documents from the Eastern District of New York reveal the scope of their operations. In April 2025, an unnamed 18th Street gang member was sentenced to 45 years in federal prison for racketeering conspiracy and 2 murders. But these weren't ordinary murders. They were public executions designed to terrorize entire communities into submission. The gang's recruitment strategy targets children as young as 8 years old. They identify vulnerable kids in schools, offer them protection and belonging, then gradually introduce them to increasingly violent activities. By the time these children realize what they've become part of, escape is impossible. Leaving Barrio 18 is punishable by death, not just for the member, but for their entire family. Inside El Salvador's prisons, Barrio 18 has created a parallel society with its own laws, economy, and justice system. They control every aspect of prison life, from food distribution to communication with the outside world. Prison guards are either on their payroll or too terrified to interfere. The prisons have become training academies where new members learn advanced techniques in torture, extortion, and psychological warfare. President Nayib Bukele's response has been unprecedented in its scope and brutality. Since declaring a state of emergency in March 2022, his government has arrested over 70,000 suspected gang members often based on nothing more than tattoos or neighborhood associations. Human rights organizations have documented widespread abuse, but public support for the crackdown remains high because people are desperate for any relief from the violence. The economic cost of gang violence in El Salvador exceeds 16% of the country's entire GDP annually. Businesses pay protection money that often exceeds their profit margins. Tourism has collapsed. Foreign investment has fled. The human exodus tells the real story. Segment 4, Yakuza, the Honorable Killers.
Police in Japan have arrested the suspected head of the Kudokai, one of the most violent Yakuza organized crime rings. Satoru Nomura is alleged to be involved in the 1998 murder of the retired head of a local fishing cooperative.
They wear business suits and carry business cards. They operate offices in downtown Tokyo and maintain websites advertising their services. They're the Yakuza, and they represent the most successful criminal organization in human history. Not because they hide from the law, but because they've made themselves indispensable to it. Unlike other criminal organizations that operate in the shadows, the Yakuza have achieved something unprecedented: legitimacy through violence. They control an estimated 40% of Japan's construction industry, significant portions of the entertainment sector, and maintain influence in politics that extends to the highest levels of government. Their violence is surgical and strategic. In 2007, Yakuza member Tetsuya Shiryu assassinated Nagasaki Mayor Iko Ito in broad daylight in front of dozens of witnesses. The murder wasn't random. It was a calculated message to politicians across Japan about the consequences of interfering with Yakuza business interests. But the Yakuza's true innovation lies in their embrace of technology. They've moved beyond traditional crimes into cybercrime, cryptocurrency manipulation, and digital extortion. They operate criminal enterprises that exist entirely in cyberspace, making them virtually impossible to prosecute under traditional laws designed for physical crimes. Their public relations strategy is masterful. During natural disasters, Yakuza organizations are often the first to provide aid to affected communities. Investigative journalist Jake Adelstein, who spent decades covering the Yakuza, describes them as the world's most successful criminal corporation. They've created a business model that generates billions in revenue while maintaining public support and government tolerance. Their violence is real, but it's carefully calibrated to avoid the kind of public backlash that has destroyed other criminal organizations. The Yakuza's international expansion has been subtle but effective. They provide technical expertise to other criminal organizations, money laundering services to cartels, and enforcement capabilities to anyone willing to pay their fees. They've become the criminal world's consulting firm, offering specialized services to criminal organizations worldwide. Segment 5, Ndrangheta, the shadow government.
Well, over 200 Ndrangheta mafia members have been sentenced to a total of 2,200 years in prison in one of the biggest trials in Italian history.
They control 80% of Europe's cocaine trade. They generate more revenue than most multinational corporations. They've infiltrated governments, corrupted judicial systems, and created a parallel economy that operates across 6 continents. Meet the Ndrangheta, Italy's most powerful criminal organization, and arguably the most dangerous gang on earth. Based in Calabria, the toe of Italy's boot, the Ndrangheta has transformed the Mediterranean Sea into their private highway. They control major ports in Rotterdam, Antwerp, and Hamburg, moving not just drugs but weapons, people, and money with impunity. European law enforcement agencies estimate they generate over 60 billion euros annually, more than the GDP of many European countries. What makes the Ndrangheta truly dangerous isn't their violence, it's their legitimacy. They own construction companies that build hospitals and schools. They operate restaurants that serve government officials. They sponsor community events and employ thousands of people in legitimate jobs. They've become so integrated into the legal economy that removing them would cause an economic collapse. Their infiltration of government institutions is complete and systematic. Italian anti-mafia investigators have documented Ndrangheta influence in local governments, regional administrations, and national political parties. They don't just corrupt individual officials. They've created entire political networks that serve their interests while maintaining the appearance of legitimate governance. 5 criminal organizations. 5 different approaches to violence. One common result: the systematic destruction of human dignity and social order. The question isn't whether these organizations will continue to evolve. It's whether we'll have the courage to evolve faster. Because in the end, the most vicious gangs alive aren't just threatening our communities, they're threatening our future. Subscribe to Crime Syndicated and step deeper into the shadows with us.